setup, but we have to make do with this. So this discussion is primarily it's an interactive open discussion which we are having today. And we have a few donor organizations and regulators here, and what we want to do is have a discussion on, the kind of projects they are doing, why they are investing in these kind of projects, what challenges they see, and if there could be a way ahead in how there could be some synergies between the different entities who, oh, sorry. Sorry. If there could be some exchange of information or, even gap analysis as to what could be done better, and, explore collaborations if possible. So with us today, and this is going to be open, we'll have some questions, and I'll throw to all the speakers here, and then you can ask questions or even give comments. You can raise your hand. And we have with us Franz from GIZ. And then we have David, who is from the Australian Department of Foreign Affairs. We have Zhao Zhang Sinik. We have Sarah Armstrong from the IZOC Foundation. We are supposed to have Samia, but I think she's not here from the World Bank. We have Katrina, who is the commissioner from Georgia. Yes, that's about it for now. We may have one or two more colleagues who may be joining for this discussion. So without much ado, oh, sorry, and I forgot the organizers, as in Raj Singh is here, who is the CEO of APNIC Foundation. And sorry, Raj, for this. So, I don't want to waste much time. 60 minutes, I think 5 minutes gone. So my first question to all the panelists would be, are you supporting projects to improve internet access and inclusion? And if yes, what do you perceive from your perspective are the two main issues that need to be addressed? And since David is just next to me, David, you're the first one.
Thank you very much for that. I actually, to be honest, sat on the end so that I would... Is it cut out? No, it's just in. Sorry about that. Thank you for the question. To me, I know it's supposed to be an informal roundtable, but I've got some notes that I've been told to read off as well, so bear with me. Thank you. Is that there? Australia is working with the Indo-Pacific regional partners to achieve greater connectivity and improve and achieve inclusive internet access. For example, our Australian Infrastructure Financing Facility, we've been partnering Pacific Island countries on investments to support all Pacific Island countries, or PICs as we call it, having primary telecommunications cable connectivity by the end of 2025. So that's been a really big focus of that facility. Since 2018, we've committed 350 million Australian dollars on that. So again, it keeps on cutting out. Apologies. The facility's also made more investments for end connectivity to build out a secure and resilient, reliable digital ecosystem. So this is actually also seen some investment in like terrestrial infrastructure, which is we've seen in PNG and also in other Pacific Island countries as well. I'd say so. That's the infrastructure aspect covered, but in terms of the work that we're supporting for secure and inclusive internet access, we go also, we have our 2023 to 2030 cybersecurity in Australia. So in line with that, we've actually got a Southeast Asia and Pacific capacity building program across both Southeast Asia and the Pacific regions. We've been focused on cybersecurity, including setting up the cyber RAPID, as we call it, which is the Rapid Assistance for Pacific Incidents and Disasters, and improving resilience in cybercrime and online scam response. So that's what we've sort of been focused on there. And the program's also supported Australia's eSafety Commission work. So, having been at the booth here today with the Australia booth, if you haven't already, please go there. It's a koala photo time soon. But we've also sort of focused on online safety work as well for digital inclusion. Um, I think also another important thing, and I'm almost finished. Please bear with me. I'm sorry, but digital trade. Digital trade's also been a key part as well. We recognise that as an important inclusionary tool. So what we try and do is we've been advocating digital trade rules to achieve trust in the online environment, including online consumer protection, but also facilitating cooperation so that trading partners can actually make the most of digital trade. So I'll leave it at that there, and thank you.
And the challenges.
The challenges. Okay. Well, I suppose the two main issues or challenges that we think need to be addressed. Again, I kind of touched upon it before, but it's the cyber resilience piece. Um, we talked about, again, as I said, the rapid response that we've got and set up and deploying incident response. We set that up after Vanuatu and Tonga had cyber incidents, which Australia had deployed some assistance in late 2022, early 23. That's all publicly out there, and which we've been acknowledged. So we saw that there was a genuine need for working with our regional partners to assist with incident response there. So that's why we set up that facility under the last year's or federal budget a couple of years ago. What we've also done, I think, we've also sort of, again, on the cybercrime, and the reason why we focus on cybercrime in terms of the two priorities, and cybercrime and cyber-enabled crime, as many of us know, it's increasing. And because it can impact individuals and small to medium enterprises, it can actually have much more profound impact as well. So that's some of the challenges that we see there. For example, where we're putting sort of, I suppose, rubber to hit the road there, so to speak, we've partnered with New Zealand and also Identity Care Australia, which for some trial funding over this year, where we've actually got a support service for them to work with impacted individuals and businesses in PNG and Fiji to respond to delivering tailored cybercrime and online scam response assistance. So that gives a measure in terms of where what we're trying to prioritise or as a key challenge. And I suppose just on covering off, I'm realising I'm running out of time. But the second main issue that we see that needs addressing is actually prioritising regional coordination. We have so many actors and donors out there as well. Look at us all sitting up on the stage here. Thank you for joining me. But, I used to work on some capacity building assistance programs with DFAT in the Pacific. And, for example, you'd have one person that might have 3 or 4 different roles that would also then have to go to 4 or 5 different trainings as well. So there's always a challenge in terms of ensuring that we're not overloading the people that we're actually trying to help in country there as well. So that's why Australia is working with the partners of the Blue Pacific. So that's Australia, New Zealand, UK, US, Canada, Japan, and Germany as well, and Korea. That's why we set up through that partners of the Blue Pacific, the Pacific Cyber Capacity and Coordination Conference. So I'll take a breath after that. Apologies. And that's one of the key outcomes of the initial and the intersessional meetings was around ensuring that people better coordination. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Raj, you will come last. I'm not going to give you to speak right now. So I'll go to Franz. Franz, over to you. GIZ's been doing a lot of work. So is there some synergy? They're working a lot on cybersecurity. And he also mentioned something like regional coordination between donors, etc. But overall to you.
Definitely. I mean, and I would be speaking for a very long time if I was going to go through all the project lists that we're having over 1,000 projects, of whom maybe 30% has some relevance in digital transformation. But maybe the focus on the region, Asia. You could look at the inclusion, digital inclusion, access to internet, access to affordable internet, at different levels. I mean, we don't obviously invest in telecommunications industry, that's the private sector job. In some cases we have advisory projects to regulatory bodies, also at the regional level, at the ASEAN level in Jakarta. But what we mainly focus on is a different level of inclusion. We have a very big program in Cambodia as well as in Indonesia, on digital inclusion for social safety and security, and that forms the very basis of inclusivity also in the less export parts of the less developed parts of the country, where the internet affordability is lower. Because generally we have in many parts of Asia pretty large coverage. A high percentage of the population is in principle reached, but affordability is a major issue. And maybe India is the best positive example in terms of having a very capable regulator and a very competitive telecommunications industry that allows the prices per gigabyte to drop as low as nobody else in the world. And then there are some negative examples where we have, I think, especially Central Africa has the highest price per gigabyte around the world. And the reason for that is it's not a good investment environment, it's not safe, there's no good rule of law, there is no good regulatory environment, no good competition and so on. So that's the very basis of affordable and inclusive internet connectivity. But then in GIZ we're also addressing the more like a few of the soft enablers that come on top of that. One is the general inclusivity of society. That's why social insurance programs in Indonesia and Cambodia. And a lot of the other programs focus on the institutions for education. That is both at the level of general education as well as vocational training, technical training institutes, and those focusing also on the digital skills in that area. So there's a few regional projects that we also focus on in Asia. That is the GIZ focus. And when we come to talk to challenges, well, the challenges are at many different levels. But if we focus on the core of internet connectivity, the usual challenge is it's a very political landscape, the regulations of telecommunications. This is a billion-dollar business, and of course a lot of interest is involved in there. The form, how the regulation is shaped, influences whether companies can be profitable or not. So that is maybe the key challenge. And in many cases we have seen that the rural access funds where cities are cross-subsidizing rural access are in many cases not working well. The funds are being diverted to other purposes, and in some cases they're not resulting in actual infrastructure deployment at that level. So that is maybe one of the challenge. You mentioned the challenge of donor coordination. Yes, indeed. That is in any public sector funding. You always have as many silos as you have funding streams. That's a very typical situation. And that's why maybe we should look at there was a big meta study done by, I think, USAID, who looked into aid effectiveness and who noticed that aid is much, much more effective when it's funded, it's channeled into local organizations. And those projects are the most effective ones that have a large part of the budget being allocated to local organizations rather than having the big international implementers implementing all by themselves. So that is maybe one approach in terms of coordination, is not only the big donors talking with each other, but also the funding lines being dispersed to local organizations. Thank you.
For bringing in even the regulatory environment, the use of access funds, rural access funds. Like India has good things, but the rural access fund has not been used. The USO4 is used everywhere, but not giving success. Zhao, over to you.
Well, actually, this year is a very particular year for China. In 1994, internet was introduced into China. So exactly for 30 years, we see from the internet users, amount is huge. Actually, we, as a .cn, but we also do policy research and statistics for the internet coverage rate. The penetration rate is 78%, but if we include the children, that means under 10 years old, if we exclude this group, according to the more internationally, the penetration rate will be over 91%. Actually, it's 1.1 billion. It's going to be 1.1 billion at the end of the month. So nearly the mobile penetration rate is 100%. So everyone is I just take my cell phone to go anywhere. I don't need to take a card. I don't need my key. I don't need to take something else. And I can go anywhere, just take a phone. my smartphone. So we see it's huge. So the internet penetration rate is huge. So we actually for .cn we recorded the data. From data we can see that a lot of things going on. So from my view, I think there are two challenges for the inclusion of the internet. The first thing is the elderly people, because the penetration rate is good, and we have 1.1 billion already, a huge amount of people. But usage rate for because we are entering an elderly society, normally it's 18.7% of Chinese people over 60 and above, and going to be 20%. And in the following not more than 20 years, are going to be 35% of the total population is going to be 60 and above. And for like my father, he couldn't use a smartphone well, and a lot of smart appliances he couldn't use that well. So he has access, but he couldn't use that well. So that's a big problem for the elderly society. It's not a problem just in China. I think in Europe, in Japan, and in other countries as well. And the second question I think for us is, still there are some 2.6 billion people have no access to the internet. How could we help them? I think we have best practice. We have a lot of cases to share, and we could call on investments, a lot of things to do to help them. And also in China, we still have 10% of them have no access. But really, if you look at the reason why they have no access, it's not just investment in the telecom. It's because they have no digital literacy. They don't recognize the characters. They can't read or write. And some other reason they have no awareness that it's important. It's no importance. It doesn't. The internet has nothing to do with my life. So I think still we have a long way to go. Thank you.
I have a follow-up question for you. What's Cynic doing? Is Cynic playing a role in this?
Yes. Actually, we are for .cn. We operate the .cn, and it's huge. We have 20 million users actually, and we are. I don't want to put it in technically, but also we are research policy for the usage rate of the internet. So with our data and our research, we support policy making. And like for example, how many women are using internet? If you look at the gender, it's quite balanced in China. 49% of users are women and 51 are men. And also we can see the age classification. So with the results, we can support policy making and what we should do next. And I think the telecom and all the governments are very interested in it.
Thank you so much, Sarah. ISOC Foundation is investing a lot in various projects.
Yes.
So what is it you are investing in the ICT projects? Primarily that's where your focus is. And what do you see as the two main challenges at this point?
Okay. So the Internet Society Foundation is a supporting organization for the Internet Society. And we are responsible for giving grants. And we do this throughout the world. In fact, we were started in the first operational year in 2020, and since that time up until now, our fifth operational year, we have distributed over $63 million in funding. We've issued more than 1,000 grants, and we are working or have worked in 121 countries. Specifically, when it relates to the APAC region, we've done nearly $5 million right now at this current time, and we have 37 active grants in the APAC region. Now, these are some overall statistics about the Internet Society Foundation, but I'd like to give you some specific examples to answer your question of some of the things that we are funding. So we are, again, the funding organization. We work with organizations throughout the world, and we are definitely interested in the issue of connectivity, access, and then we also care a lot about how people can benefit from the internet and how they can be upskilled in order to learn what the things are that they need to do to increase their economic education or economic opportunities and their education. So an example, in Indonesia, we have a project called Kota Kita. It's part of our skills program. We have 11 different programs. I won't go into them all, but I will just say this is a skills program. It's about building digital literacy. And they are working actually with women with disabilities to help them with social enterprises. So that is a growth opportunity there that's focused on training that we think is really important. And we have many training programs, but that's an example in the APAC region. We have another grantee, Digital Empowerment Fund, that works in India. So we have Indonesia and India right now. And it's called a BOLT grant, where they're looking for innovative ways to connect people. So this program right now is aiming to bring 50,000 people across 100 communities worldwide, and they are working with tea tribes throughout an area of India. They're also doing a resiliency grant. This is a program where we help communities prepare for disasters that we know will come so that they're better equipped to deal and be ready to get back up online and communicate. The small island states are certainly an area that we believe in targeting, and we will be doing more of that in 2025 and going forward. We also are, excuse me, funding an organization called the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineer, IEEE. This is a resiliency grant, again, another grant to help communities prepare for the inevitable disasters that will come and be ready. And this is working right now, aiming to impact directly 20,000 people. So the final project to share in the APAC region, this is not the only set of the grants that we have, but I wanted to give you an idea to answer the question of what it is we are funding to help with this situation. And this is a Beyond the Net Large grant, where they're providing literacy skill building to allow citizens to participate in e-governance services provided by the government of Kyrgyzstan. Very important. Again, it's not just getting access, it's knowing what to do once you have that access. There's also a research grant where they are creating an open and secure IoT infrastructure for monitoring and preventing emergencies in landlocked mountainous communities. So we're doing a lot in APAC. We're doing a lot throughout the world. We don't do the work ourselves. We fund the work. So we are a funder. And I think to talk about the biggest issues, affordable, meaningful access, and how we can do that, we find to be extremely important. And then the others, as I was saying, ensure that training is part of a lot of the programs that we do so that we can be sure people are benefiting to the fullest. So those are the areas that we know are challenging. And I guess the biggest challenge too, quite frankly, is that the need is so great, and we have still 2.6 billion people who are not connected.
In some places, even giving the grants, like in India, you can't give to many people also is a challenge.
Yes.
But Ekaterina, I will come to you, but I will first talk to the donors, and we have Samia here. Thank you for joining, and Shariar came in. If you could share, World Bank is in a lot of things, but what ICT related projects are you all focusing on, and what do you see as a challenge, because you work at a different level?
Thank you so much. And it's so good to be here with all our partners and friends from the UN system. The World Bank has been doing a lot on digital, and we are scaling up our products and services. As you know, the World Bank provides financing support either through loans or grants. And for the low and really low income countries, most of the assistance is through what we call IDA grants. So we're seeing an unprecedented increase in IDA grants. We have around 100 billion mobilized for that round. And unlike the last 10 years, digital has become a big priority at the World Bank. We've been reorganized, and digital became one big vice presidential unit at par with human capital, sustainable development, and infrastructure. So it's really big for us in terms of both the attention, the mandate, and the resources that are being made available to support digital acceleration. For one reason, we are worried about that big digital divide. We are seeing the impact it's causing on attaining the SDGs. You know very well that countries that are adopting digital are much more likely, 45% more likely, in fact, to achieve the SDGs on time. We are also seeing the big gap in the job markets, how all the jobs are kind of almost monopolized in countries where you have high-end, high-value jobs, pretty much because you have strong capacity in STEM and digital skills. And these never happen without a strong digital public infrastructure. If these kids grow up with no connection, and by the time they're connected, they're 50, they would have missed out on a lot of job opportunities. So we're seeing that. We're seeing that more now with AI, which needs really a lot of data, a lot of good data, if we want it to be useful, if we want it to be ethical, but it also needs data in all the spoken languages we are talking about, specifically, as we mentioned here, Asia in general or South Asia. So really a lot to do, and we are pushing to accelerate. Our focus is, as all my colleagues said, affordable broadband for all. The second one is financing with government and private sector, not only telecom, but also the digital public infrastructure, the government networks, the digital ID, the shared services, the authentication and security, and then the sectoral applications for health, education, transport, security, so on and so forth. The last one, you brought it so well, digital skills. What is this use if we're putting millions and billions if people cannot use it? Or if they depend on the North or the West or whatever we call it to provide that. So really, and here everybody, what everybody said is really music to my ear, and I completely agree with all the focus on digital skills, building local capacity, investing in NGOs. Look, as you transfer capacity to a local entity, whether it's a government or a private sector, are they going to be as great in the beginning than the top consulting firms? No, but they know the local context. They know who does what. They have the local intel that many times these big firms don't have, and they fail just because of that. They have the know-how, they don't know the context. So I think I outlined the challenges. If I can just focus on one thing, which is very dear to me, which is what you all mentioned, really cooperation at a country level, at a regional level, making sure that we put all that good know-how and financing in coherent pieces so that one day we'll be sitting here and the 2.6 billion people would have been connected with meaningful access. Thank you.
So well said. Raj, I'll come to you and then Shahryar. Ethnic Foundation, what you're doing, and what do you see as challenges?
Thank you, Amrita, and it's nice to have all of you join this session. So thank you for making time for it. In terms of what the APNIC Foundation does, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that no one knows the Asia Pacific better than we do. We've been around for over 30 years. We've built most of the internet infrastructure in the region in some way or form. We've helped with training, with capacity building, and so on. The foundation itself, of course, is the development arm of APNIC, which is the Regional Internet Registry. We have the longest running innovation fund in the region that's been running for over 16 years now, the Information Society Innovation Fund. We have funded programs across inclusion, knowledge, and infrastructure, which are the three pillars of that program. And, whether it's senior citizens or upskilling women or improving gender diversity in the workforce, we do all of that. We're a small organization, but we do a lot of work. So one of the things we like to say is that we're more about action rather than words. So action, not words. I'll get to some of the issues and challenges I see. One is, and this has concerned me for quite a while, so if you've had me speak before, I keep on repeating the same thing because hopefully someone's going to listen. And Samia, you mentioned some of this actually. It's the widening digital divides we're creating. So it's not just the digital divides, it's the widening digital divides we're creating. And that's got to do with infrastructure. It's got to do with the devices people use. It's got to do with digital literacy. So, we can go down through the layers and define where those divides are widening. It also goes down to a simple thing, very technical, whether an economy or a country or an organization is using IPv6 or is it still using IPv4. So there's just so many layers of these widening digital divides because depending on what they have access to and what they can leverage, that will determine what they can do with that connectivity they have, right? We talk about how wireless, for example, LEO sets are changing the landscape. Yes, they are, but there's still challenges with that as well. There's legislative issues or regulatory issues at play with there. There's also an affordability angle to that, So we shouldn't just look at one form of technology as the solution to fix everything. It has to be multimodal in nature. The second problem, in fact, I'm going to mention three problems. Yeah, the second problem is just the level of prioritization that exists between governments, within regions, and unfortunately, even within a government. Very few have a whole of government approach to digital transformation. Time and time and again, this keeps coming up. You've got an IT ministry, someone set up a digital ministry, then there's the finance ministry, then there's home affairs or foreign affairs who also want to, not having a shot at you, but the thing is that, if you don't have a whole of government approach, you're going to be working in silos, as Franz said. And then, of course, the third thing is just the coordination between donors. There's just so much duplication of work. And it distresses me when I see multiple organizations giving funding to do the same thing that someone else has already done. And yes, you got to tick off some KPIs or tick some boxes on your delivery or whatever it is that you need to do. But if you want to bring about holistic transformative change, you have to consider what's already out there and where do I go and plug the gaps. That's what the APNIC Foundation does. We're more interested in plugging the gaps. So if any of you want to come help and support us and plug gaps with us, please talk to us. Thanks, Samrit.
Thanks so much, Raj. Coordination is something which I'm hearing everywhere, most of the things. And Shahryar, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think my job has been easier by Raj and by Samia and ISOC. So we do a combination of what has been said, but comparing ourselves, Islamic Development Bank as can be seen as a smaller version of what the World Bank does. So we do financing of digital development. Our main objective, of course, we are more on the digital inclusion side, and we have digital inclusion strategy that was launched last year for 4 years, where we have four key areas that we focus on. So first focus is basically on smart policy and that we build this of our member states. And the idea is, of course, we know the challenges are huge. So without private sector intervention, there could not be, either bridging the digital divide, or we talk about widening the digital divide. And now we are hearing in this conference that we are having the AI divide pretty soon. That we will be able to monitor and capture and see. The other aspect that we cover is, of course, the capacity building, which is digital literacy of not only policymakers but end users as well, so that once they have the internet connectivity provided, how the use of these services. Then, of course, we have the one of the aspect that we have is traditional. What we have been doing is financing of enabling digital infrastructure so that the country has the capacity, so that we do work on the upstream side, is financing submarine cables, fiber optic backbone. We have done several of them in Southeast Asia, East Africa, West Africa. And last but not least, what we have really focusing very recently is mainstreaming of technology into developed sectors like smart education, how we can use technology in education, telemedicine, health services, e-agriculture, smart cities. So that the idea is we make our development operations more effective, more impact, last but not least, more sustainable. Low resources. This is a challenge that we face. We don't have the luxury of the lot of grants that the World Bank has. So we have very limited amount of grants. We have limited amount of financing, and of course, our member countries, which are the global South, so they also have challenges in borrowing. So we have to come up with innovative financing instruments of blended finance so that it is affordable for the country to absorb these financing, and then of course make. So that's why we insist on developing a business case so that it's even commercially viable, so that it is self-sustainable, and then it basically, once we have an exit policy, once we finish the funding, what is the model that it will sustain the whole operation of this intervention that we do. I'll share sorry for taking a bit longer, is that we recently came up with, just 3 weeks ago, we did a policy digital for Africa region partnership with ITU. And we actually, this program was never done before. We co-designed it because what we are trying to promote is we are promoting a concept of govpreneurship. So we encourage policymakers to come up with innovative programs that an international financing institution could finance to help bridge the digital divide. So otherwise, these innovative solutions we expect normally from the private sector, from SMEs, but what we are trying to promote is govpreneurship, that we encourage policymakers, that we help you, we will help you to have the right capacity so that you think out of the box and come up with programs that will help us, bridge the digital divide collectively. We are doing a similar program with UNDP. We call it Digital Stewardship Community. So we are coming up with a community of policymakers who have the digital capacity. So they basically not only do capacity building programs, we do programs for them, and then they encourage their other policymakers within their ministries to come up with projects, help them to brush up, and then ultimately when we do the MCPS, which is member country partnership strategy, country engagement framework, then those policymakers are invited to share their experiences, what they have learned. So what we are doing is we are not only doing capacity building programs, but we are hand holding them to come up with larger projects, and then we ultimately either us or it help our partners to come and finance those interventions. We are working with the Ministry of Villages. We are financing their AI tool that would basically help develop them to have the capacity to do their infrastructure service delivery planning. So in Indonesia, if you're aware that the village have their community engagement to set up a yearly plan. So initially it was manual, but now they converted into a service innovation platform. They call it SIP, and now we are financing the AI embedded tool of that platform that would utilize the information available so that every participatory stakeholder is involved so that they can give their input and we can come up with a better infrastructure services, be it water, be it road, be it energy supply in the villages. So these are a couple of examples that I wanted to share that we are working on, and we are happy to collaborate with others because we will be replicating in other countries and in the country, scale it within the country as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sharir. I'll go to Katrina. You've been hearing the donor community speaking a lot. From a government perspective, where is it that, what do you see are the gaps which you find when there are projects being held in a country? What, from your perspective, the other side are the gaps?
Thank you so much. I think that this is the perfect momentum for me because after I will give you another perspective from the implementation side, how it evolved, and also take you to other part of the world, which is South Caucasus, but still working closely with World Bank and other donor organizations like ISOC, GIZ, also European Investment Bank. So let me mention the major state program, which was supported by World Bank, which is the State Broadband Development Program, which was bringing the high-speed broadband to villages of Georgia. We are a small but mountainous country, and we still have the rural-urban gap. And it's we all agree that today's economy and sustainable economic development is absolutely not unthinkable without having your citizens to have access to affordable, high-speed, high-quality internet. So we were supported to bring the middle mile connectivity. It's 5,000 kilometers of the broadband, and up to 1,000 villages will be covered. And it's very important when we speak about the challenges. The challenge for the regulator and state is that support to the funded project should also still maintain competitiveness of the market. So the players might tell you that if you have enough funds to just give the funded internet to all the villages, we might step back and leave the market. So this is one of the challenges, that to ensure to be very precise where are those white spots where you definitely need this funding and this will not breach the competitiveness overall for the country, and it will evolve to more competitive digital ecosystem for the country, and not to scare investors, for example, for the innovative technologies, but most important for the state is to make your citizens protected and give them access and affordable access to high-speed internet. So this was the first step, and another important step where the role of Comcom, the regulator, was also broader is the another second component of the project. First was the infrastructure build up, and second was that supporting the component that will support the literacy component, which is the bringing awareness how to use the internet, which is another challenge because you need to really come to each small village and find community and make people confident that it's really interesting to listen how you can use internet for economic, to grow up your business or your household and for economic benefits. Also to reach out to people from the different ethnical groups, though we are a small country, but we have different ethnical groups and they might stay still reserved with some novelties or some state programs and might not invest their time to hear about this new program. So it was Comcom's role to find proper communities in the regions, in the villages, to reach out and start this media literacy trainings. And Comcom has been given the nationwide role of developing media literacy in the country. So with this broader state-defined role, we were empowered, we were supported by Ministry of Education to work with schools, with universities, and also to also reach out to the people with disabilities for whom it is most important to have access to the digital technologies nowadays. It is a bigger enabler, I would say, for the people with disabilities to be reached out and to learn how to turn this access into the benefit for their lives, for improving their next day or improving, or it's very popular in Georgia for example, micro businesses, small businesses to really understand how they can digitize their services and how they can use this high-speed broadband for their day-to-day activities. So I think that's very similar challenges around the world, and yeah, let's keep doing, let's keep going with this strategy. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. A question which all the speakers out here need to think, but we'll take some questions from the ground also is, yeah, I'm coming to you. One question which you need, which I would like you to respond later is two areas where you would be focusing on from 2025 and beyond. But we have some questions. We'll take two or three together and then you could respond.
Sorry, this is more of a comment than question. It's okay. I'm from the Internet Society Foundation, and I just wanted to say, going back to your point, your comments about not being able to fund India, and Raja's point about the need for cooperation and peer dialogue among funders. One thing working at the foundation that I think is another challenge is not being able to fund a lot of people you want to fund. And this is something that we recently experienced with Georgia. So I would just ask or put out if there are ways as funders and organizations to think of ways to work within legal frameworks, but also just find ways to support people in countries where they might not be able to receive funding legally from other sources. Just being able to share ideas or maybe partners that you work with that you know are good in the region.
Thank you so much. So it's again coordination, better coordination, how you can use. Yes, please.
Hi, Jordanka Tomkova from InnovaBridge Foundation, Switzerland. I'm curious about the innovation in the sort of interventions that you have made and the funding that you're providing. If you have any good examples of innovative approaches, whether centralized or decentralized, because that is the title of today's talk. So not what has been done and what is sort of standardly done, but what is innovative about it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any other questions from the room? If not, I will, any of the speakers wants to speak innovatively using approaches of funding, and can there be more exchange between community, as in, since you're here, I would say the community here to share best practices of how you can reach out to more communities who need fund, where you currently, because of regulatory challenges, are not able to reach. Anyone wants to take a step?
I'll be very quick because, yes, very good question, innovation. I think the first innovation is in the approach on how do you really get to those that are not accessed, because there's no way to reach them if you can't call them. Many don't even have an ID. So the idea of using local NGOs, community, we have digital ambassadors in most of our projects, and these are handpicked, thousands of them, that we kind of empower, train, compensate in different ways, and they are from the areas that are newly connected. We have that in Congo, in Zambia, we have that in Bangladesh, in Pakistan. So really using the youth on the ground, which we didn't in the past. The other element is to really have more participation, crowdsourcing in the design of projects. These projects are getting bigger, and they really need to have participation of the stakeholder. So more design thinking as we plan these particular project. Last but not least, and it's not an innovation, but really working more amongst one another and the private sector to understand where the jobs are and help universities, academic institute, learning institutions reform their the supply of programs to really align with the job market.
Yeah, thanks, Samrita. So Samia covered some of the approaches they take, which I think some of us take as well. One thing I do want to bring up, and it's just pointing out the elephant in the room, a lot of the reasons we can't deploy funds in certain economies is due to a thing called sanctions and due to another thing called geopolitics. So that, I think, has to be taken into account, because what we find is where the greatest intervention required, where we could have the most impact, are those economies and peoples in those economies who are suffering, not because of their doing, it may be the political system or whatever else that exists in that economy. So how do you try and ensure that, we can help the people who need the most help? And that, I think, has been one of the challenges we've had to face. So what we've done, our approach has been to find partners who can actually go and work in those economies. Sometimes we can ourselves. Sometimes we are limited by government sanctions and or legislation that we can't. But there is, there are ways that can be addressed as well. So, however, what sort of concerns me is that we don't seem to talk about that as enough, because we want to do things here and there and everywhere else. But the people who can have the most benefit from digital technologies and all the benefits that the internet can provide, sometimes we just don't go there because we can't even send money there, or we can't send people because there's a security issue, for example. So, I think there is some scope to work together to find some innovative approaches on how we can address that issue. And happy to discuss that further. I know we are out of time.
Thank you. I know Sarah is going to go next. For example, Raj would not say it. I'll say it. Afghanistan is one place where putting in money for most people is difficult, but they need it the most, women, etc. Sarah, you and then Sharia.
Yes, just briefly, some of the examples that I mentioned here, we feel are really putting forth real innovative solutions. This organization that I mentioned earlier that is doing the IoT to help with detection of emergencies in the climate area, that's our Kyrgyzstan chapter. I think that's a really good example of what's going on in being innovative. And we have also the IEEE that's working in India, and they are working with solar-based uninterruptible power supply. Wait, did that just cut out? Okay. Um, so we're seeing elements of that. And we also would say that in order to continue to find innovative solutions, we are encouraging our grantees to learn from one another and to experience what others are doing and how they're doing it and how it can be more innovative and responsive to the cultures in which they're working. So that's a very important part of the type of foundation that we are and we'd like to continue to be.
Yep. Maybe just on one thing that I wanted to share. Traditionally, the new method that we came up with very recently, traditionally the bank has been operating in a way that we receive a request from our member country and then we address the needs. So when we were developing our digital inclusion strategy, which was launched here in Riyadh last year, we actually went through a very detailed consultative process of over 1.5 years, which involved policymakers from 14 countries, 14 member countries, and 10 international organizations. I can see Mr. Sharif sitting here, and he was part of that discussion. So we had called something called ISDB Digital Inclusion Technical Working Group, and we've reached out to different policymakers from countries for in-person and hybrid workshops in different part of our member country constituency. Out of that, fast forward 1 year, when we came up with the strategy, we said, okay, we have a strategy, but what would be a catalyst to embark on certain immediate programs that would kickstart some ground? So we came up with this digital inclusion strategic partnership program, where we encouraged all those partners that were with us throughout the journey in terms of the developing the strategy to come up with pilot programs that would have some sort of scalability criteria or appetite for that would encourage more people or more international organizations, even in private sector, to come in and finance the scalability part. So we are now financing for pilot programs in Pakistan, in Smart Village. We are doing a pilot program in Indonesia, in Maldives, and working with different partners on digital ID, so that we de-risk for the government, so that if we can have some sort of immediate results, we know a certain an amount that we are looking at in terms of financing some immediate results that would encourage potential financiers or investors to come in and fill in these gaps. So these are some of the innovative mechanisms, other than the one that I already mentioned is blended finance. So we come up with a grant portion with some sort of a soft lending, especially for low-income countries that otherwise would not be able to afford the financing for the immediate needs that they would like to have some sort of impact in the country. So this is what I wanted to share. Thank you.
Do have one question, and I see an alert of 5 minutes. So, there is one question. I have to give it to her. She's from Myanmar. But I would take back the last question. I would think, what can we do next? 1 minute for each, or even half a minute. Fio, quick.
Yeah, I just would like to agree with the Raj, and thank you for raising about the vulnerable community that we are suffering a lot of the internet issue, and that is also another challenge of the community like Myanmar, Afghanistan, to resist the funding to build the capacity in our community. I really thanks, and I would like to I would like to request to the all of the grantors and vendors to think about some time to break through over to see the community, not seeing the sanction or geopolitical situation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Very relevant point. So my question to all of you would be, what do we do next? We've discussed it. We say coordination is important, but what should be our next steps if we really want to take this discussion ahead? Anyone wants to take a jab first?
I have the mic. I can. So the what we have done in addition to what I've just mentioned is what we are now coming up is that we have already a whole list of 72 programs in our pipeline that has the potential to have over 1 billion worth of digital development projects. And of course, we ourselves cannot finance all of it. So what we are doing is we are encouraging partners to come in and chip with the development of these programs. So the idea is that we, over the next 3 years, we will help not only do the capacity building for the policymakers and the countries itself, but we will help them come up with, basically from a concept note to a bankable project that would ultimately be available for financing for either the private sector, any MDB. So there are a certain number of programs that we need to do the seed funding for. And we look forward to those kind of interventions and happy to collaborate and work together towards achieving collective goals. Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, thank you so much. I'll try to be very, very quick. So I want to mention one step that will be still ongoing is like implementing media digital literacy into formal education. This is one of the components that is crucial for the country, and I think this will somehow make the circle of the success story of the whole broadband development with the component of literacy and with the component of safe use of internet. So we will make it even broader in schools and universities. And a second topic that is on our agenda, as far as the digital is a cross-cutting stream. So involve more sectors into this. When you bring the broadband infrastructure and literacy, you need to bring also other economic stakeholders to make a real success story out of your investment. Thank you.
All right, so on what to do next? For GIZ as a big organization, our answer is we take our decisions very decentrally. Probably 90% of our budgets are being decided by people who live and reside in the country where it's being implemented. And that is one of the answers towards innovation, because when you want to source good and applicable innovations, that needs to happen locally. So that's where also most of the coordination shall happen going forward. And another recommendation for all the granting mechanisms and calls for proposals. I mean, one big important feedback that we got and what the grantees very much appreciated is keeping all these processes very simple. Have the pitch done on one sheet of paper, and then have a subsequent pitching session, and do not overburden grantees with bureaucracy. That's the best way to become effective and good value for money and sourcing the real innovations, and not just those organizations that are very good at checking all the boxes of all the donors. So don't put too many strings attached, but rather make it simple and make it fit for purpose.
So I'll just repeat what I said before. Don't duplicate. If you want to do something in the Asia Pacific, come and talk to us. Come and talk to me. For you. Thank you.
And I'm just,
G'day. Just quick.
oh,
No, yeah, please.
wasn't sure who was next. Okay, just to add on, absolutely, we are continually looking for ways to improve the foundation and the way in which it works. It's 5 years old, and we are just launching our next 5-year strategy. So we are full of new ideas. More simplicity with our grantees we know is extremely important. So we're finding ways to do that. We think that's important. Looking too for more gender focus. We think that the digital gender divide is an important thing for us to be addressing. So that's another area that we'll be focusing on going in the future in terms of that. And then also continuing to find innovative ways, because some of the environments in which we're working are very difficult, as we've talked about, and seeing if we can identify grantees that are able to come up with solutions where they can address some of the problems that we've encountered. So we are going to move forward with a lot of enthusiasm and possibly a fair amount of changes.
Thank you. Beyond what I already said around focusing on the capacity building on cybersecurity and cybercrime, I think also what we're, as an honourable mention, with the data, my colleague from the World Bank said before, with the data and the data being critical in a number of things, one thing that we are looking forward to is actually supporting cloud transformation roadmaps for countries, particularly in PNG and Vanuatu. So that's one thing that we actually also focus on there too. But also taking stock of things, that's really important. The monitoring and evaluation piece is really important. It's all well and good that we have these approaches which have worked and/or we're continuing to innovate, but ensuring that what we're doing actually is hitting the mark and is doing what we need it to do. And also, having been Foreign Affairs and working with the APNIC Foundation, I support Raj's plug to partner with APNIC Foundation. There we are.
Personally, I would like to focus on AI governance because digitalization is a process, internet is the foundation, but AI is going to change each field more or less. So I want this talk to continue, dialogue to continue, because as a group of people, we are going to make a sense. Thank you.
Yes, you've said it all. And if I can complement with two actions, the first one is for big organization, perfect example, the Saudi government wants to fund a lot of these projects. How to make sure it is done, it is approved, and it's not too complicated. NGOs, etc. So make partnership much easier. And second, with the client side, with the government, we oftentimes start big projects, but they're not completed. We do an ID system, and 10% of the people of that country are in it. What about the other 90%? Make it easy to have follow-up projects to complete what we started and keep perfecting it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We would be ending, but I think this dialogue, as Zhao mentioned, needs to continue. And may I, as a moderator, suggest that perhaps if there could be a mailing list kind of a thing where like-minded donors could actually share, like. World Bank, etc., has tremendous knowledge, like what you shared, that projects are not completed, or make it easier for hosts, etc. Then the bank has some ideas, governments have some ideas. Could there be some kind of a mailing list where you can share the experiences, like Franz was saying, that, someone was saying, let's not duplicate projects, I think Franz said, and let's see how this knowledge which is there can use. For example, if GIZ is making a simpler form, could others look at it as an inspiration? I'm not saying copy paste it, but so perhaps if someone can think of having a mailing list, etc. I don't know, Raj, would Apnic Foundation would want to have a mailing list if others want, and it could be informal way where you all exchange, so that what discussion happens you can continue, other people can also join it or not join it. That's just a suggestion. You can take it or leave it. And we would like to have a group photo first of the speakers. Thank you so much. It was really good. We would love to have a 90-minute session actually, but we ran out of time. If we would get just 3 minutes to take a photograph of the speakers and then of the group, right? Thank you.